Here are the top posts from whowouldwin on the 15th of October 2019.
Memer Machiner 6174. Voldemort with a lightsaber versus Darth Vader with the Elder Wand. Lying idiot. So you are pitting a Force-sensitive cyborg Voldemort against a wandless Voldemort with a fancy glow stick? Unless you forgot to add something, then Darth Voldemort got all the advantages here.
Major P. Vader wins 100% of the time. Voldemort isn't experienced with a lightsaber, while Vader doesn't even need to use the Elder Wand because of the Force. Voldemort would be destroyed. Minimaster 15. Voldemort has zero experience with a lightsaber, so he might end up cutting himself. Vader doesn't need his saber to fight efficiently thanks to the Force. Without his wand, does Mort have a way to consistently get out of a Force choke? Zombie 2. John Wick vs. Nolan vs. Batman, TDK. To buy off him. I think Wick is capable of taking out Nolan Batman. But the trouble is finding Batman. Perhaps he can set up some kind of bank robbery ambush or similar. But Bat will be wise to the fact someone is after him monsieur. Then actually fighting Batman. Wick probably needs to shoot Bats in the mouth before Bats knows what is going on. Any kind of prolonged fight and Bats will win or retreat if necessary. Once Bats knows Wick is the hitman, Wick is screwed. I give him maybe a 3/10 chance of it working.
Bryn 2088. Even Nolan vs. Bats is noticeably swift-moving, and Bats has gotten up from being shot before. I'm not sure how he'll do against M1 rounds, but if it's in a dark alley, Bat wins like 9.5/10. Dudeth blow. As long as Bats turns this into a H2H match as quick as possible, he should take this no problem monsieur. His strength in the Nolan movies is ungodly even by peak human standards. So if he can pull off an ambush, which he probably can, he should take this 9/10 times. Caleb Santos. The worst singer who could win the Giant Heads Rick and Morty challenge.
Theon Hollyblade. Considering how shitty Rick's song was, anyone with the basic ability to talk should be fine. An average mute person could play a song from their phone. This narrows it down to this. The worst singer would be someone who is mute with no access to music. Or you could play BTS. But that's asking for human extinction.
Tinfoil King. Maybe if you start laying down a sick beat while a Vogan goes at it. Like, if the broadcast kills every living thing that hears it besides the Vogan band, they win by default. Right?
Naddaprot. Rick and Morty are the worst singers who could win. RPH 39. State of the Sub October 14, 19.
Sidofic. Here's one. Batman. TL. Drive. He's boring on this sub because people think of him as an unbeatable god because of the feats they can reference, or else by lazily invoking the phrase prep time. Don't reply unless you do read this post though. I've never seen him brought up in this sub without people concluding he could beat anybody with enough prep time. Whole threads that could be interesting matchups are completely ruined by including Batman. I'm sure some of it isn't fully serious. Like people are just saying it cause it's kind of a meme. But most people seem to take it as fact that he can beat literally everyone anyway. It's boring and it's frustrating. It's made me unsub before. I'm not suggesting you ban discussion including him monsieur. I know these aren't official, but this sub has a few standard elements that it uses. Like average man or rational man with a shotgun and other concepts like that to help ground the topic or represent an idea. I wouldn't suggest doing this for any character other than Batman, but I think WWW would greatly benefit from trying to encourage people to think of Batman for the purposes of this sub as a prescribed composite, standardized version of himself in a similar way. Most cape comic characters suffer from problems when trying to talk about them, such as wildly different power levels across or within media, canon issues, many different writers, long history, etc. Batman obviously isn't the only one, but this doesn't really cause the same problem for anyone else. And I know there are multiple different RTs for different versions of him, but on this sub, there's a mentality about him that is partly fed by people thinking of him as a combo of all version of himself among other things. All I'd propose, if there's no better idea, is to create a standard Batman. This would be essentially an original, tailor-made for WWW Batman character, one that, using real feats and evidence, a la the existing respect threads, creates a manageable, reasonable character that represents the capability of Batman in spirit. What does this mean? We all know about the craziest feats he has and the mightiest things he's done in his various stories. What I'm saying is that shouldn't represent Batman. We all know what he's supposed to be. An intellectual fighter from the shadows. A detective. An inventor. Not a god. How do we do this? Maybe we should create a new list of feats, and use only ones that happen regularly, or casually. It would be like a consolidated Batman respect thread. Maybe it could even live on this sub. For example, we could look at his best strength feat. Maybe it's something he did only one time, and against an opponent that's unusually or unrealistically stronger than him, monsieur, but he takes punches from strong villains over and over. Let's consider that instead. Maybe the first thing shouldn't count. That's just a start. The real problem lies with the reason people on this sub like the character. We like to see how a regular man, relatively, would defeat gods. It's important to recapture that idea though, which is why the standard Batman is necessary. He needs a list of feats that make him feel like more of a human again. A very smart, very fit, very skilled human, but still a human. It is horse shit to pretend like he isn't a superhuman when using feats like people do. Let's just rein him in a little before tackling the next problem, monsieur. Prep time has become such an undefeatable superpower for Batman that it's become part of this subreddit's lexicon, and is applied in fights not including him. He's obviously not the only character who prepares things, but the specific phrase prep time is obviously invoking him, and it will even be used to set match parameters. With enough prep time, he can beat anyone is the statement here that is the pure distillation of how WWW thinks of Batman. This phrase is used constantly. Whether or not it's actually true, I think we should treat it like it's not. Firstly, people should only discuss prep time if it's specifically brought up by the opposite part of the matchup. Again, no matter the matchup, people seem to immediately mention this even though it isn't stated. And sometimes it's even mentioned that there's no time, and just leave their argument at that. He could win with prep time. So what? Low effort, sometimes irrelevant, yet it's ubiquitous here. If we could get enough evidence, maybe there could be a scale, a timeline that describes generally what he's actually capable of with prep time. Or just have a rough description based on evidence of the sorts of things he could do in an hour, a day, a week, etc. This could even be somewhat made up, agreed upon the community, but used as a standard from which arguments could actually be made. For an example of why this is shit, I've seen a straightforward matchup where someone described how he could just go into hiding and build an army while making scientific breakthroughs that would then help him with the fight. That's dumb. It's not in the spirit of the question or in the spirit of Batman. Anyway, I think I've made my point by now. I guess I'll just answer questions if something wasn't clear.
Cool and average guy. Aside from being several paragraphs long and linking to respect threads, what makes a thread on here high effort? Cool and average guy. How many characters in a thread are too many? Recently there was MCU versus every other popular movie franchise thread where people said there were too many characters to ever determine an answer. But what's the limit? 5 versus 5, 20 versus 20, 80 versus 80, 150 weak, medium characters versus one very powerful character?
Durst Erroneous. George Lucas versus Zack Snyder.
Meslabor. I feel like George Lucas wins by default because we've already seen Zack Snyder butcher the Justice League. Chronos 373. A lot of people are forgetting that Zack Snyder's daughter killed herself halfway through filming Justice League. So Joss Whedon finished the movie for him and he didn't have much creative freedom because Warner Brothers didn't want the movie to flop. I definitely Zack Snyder could be more faithful to the source material and make a better movie than Lucas given full creative control. Total Inita Psycho 42. George wins hands down for simply being a BSTTER director overall. Cinder failed on so many accounts with his films. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe.